Williamson.
Not here.
Bush.
Here.
Layton.
Absent.
Walsh.
She is supposed to be signing in online.
Okay.
She is not here yet.
Okay. Reimer.
Here.
Pomeranke.
Here.
Almquist.
Here.
Hodges.
Here.
Sherwood, yep. City Attorney.
I don't think we have anyone tonight.
Cool.
All right. So we have minutes to approve. Let's approve the minutes from the 1/26/2026.
I move to approve the minutes from January 26, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from 1/26/2026. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
I abstained since I wasn't here or a member.
Fair enough.
Duly noted. Unscheduled citizens, anybody here or online to speak to something that is not on the agenda?
There is nobody online.
There's no one signed up.
Anyone
And nobody signed up.
Okay. Any amendments to this agenda? No?
Nope.
All right, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Review and recommendation for the amendment to the South Ark Neighborhood Plan Development Substantial Modification.
I'll let Kristen pull up the presentation.
I do want to just ask, Sarah is still not online. I can interrupt for the record to let you guys know when she is online. Or if she does not come, are you able?
Just give us a heads up
Give
when
us-
she does
yeah.
jump on.
We have a quorum without her.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That was mostly my question. Thank
We have
you.
4 regulars, so.
So I guess it would depend, yeah, if she's in quickly, otherwise,
Well, everybody can vote except the alternate,
yeah.
because it's just
Okay,
not fair.
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Take it away, Bill.
All right. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows our 2 new folks here. Don Reimer is a regular member, and Laura Pomeranke, did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, as our alternate. So welcome aboard. This is a pretty big one for the first one. So
I'll say.
congratulations. Yeah, so what we have in front of you this evening are some potential amendments to the South Ark Neighborhood PD modification that went into effect a couple of years back. It was a modification to the larger Vanderveer Ranch plan development. We got a little bit of background here. 200 acres approximately on the southeast portion of town that was purchased by the city in 2004. That led to the eventual Vanderveer Ranch Plan Development District, which was approved in 2006 and then amended through a substantial modification process in 2011. There's a whole lot of history that we could go over, but in general, what was planned out there did not happen immediately, and some of the property ended up getting sold off to private developers, especially in the eastern 100 acres of the property. And then some of those property owners have come in with various modifications and requests, including the Confluent Park PD modification that came in 2019. That's on the east side of Highway 50. And then that left the city with approximately 100 acres. That is the subject of tonight's hearing. And this is a graphic representation of sort of everything that has been done around the Vanderveer Ranch plan development. A little difficult to see, but here's the original 2006 plan development. Then it was modified by the 2011 version of it. Out of that, the Confluent Park PD modification came out, was very specific to that one area, that one VPA on the east side of Highway 50. 2023, we came in with the South Ark modification of the city-owned remaining 100 acres. And then what we are discussing this evening is an amendment to that PD modification. So I hope that helps clear it up just a little bit, as much as mud anyways. So as you may recall, for those of you who are around here, we went through a pretty substantial public planning process to develop a master plan for those approximately 96 acres that are owned by the city of Salida, including the biggest meeting I think that the city has ever held there in the steam plant, where over 300 people ended up coming in through the evening. Multiple open houses, some charrettes, online surveys, and even some on-site tours that some of you were a part of. Next slide. So in the end, the result of that master planning process was what you see here. On the left is the breakdown between the residential portion, what we call the South Arc neighborhood in the yellow or orange there, and then the remaining, and that's comprises about 32 acres, and then the remaining approximately 63 acres in the green that's meant to be and stay as an open space and regional park. The middle slide here just kind of shows the more defined breakdown of housing within the neighborhood itself, as well as potential locations for sports fields and potential public facility, recreation or other institutional facility in the purple there. And then the phasing is shown in that third slide. The bottom darker blue represents phase 1 of the development, which includes all your backbone infrastructure, water, wastewater, and most of the roads going in. And then phases 2 and 3 are in the north and further, a little bit further to the east, and be followed up. But this first phase accounts for approximately 150, or is anticipated to account for about 150 out of the 400 units anticipated overall for this neighborhood. Next slide. So as I mentioned, about up to 400 units with mix of housing types from single family, duplexes, townhomes, multifamily of various sizes, and a little bit of mixed use. There's, in that mixed use, up to 10,000 square feet of small scale commercial that would be allowed, specifically in this area on the map that we're looking at, and primarily located in that red portion there on the map. There are 3 sub-area zone districts. We'll show you that map in a minute, and there's different permissions for each of those sub-areas. As I mentioned, about 62, 63 acres of open space, and the requirement currently is for a minimum of 50% affordable restricted units. Next slide. I was speaking of the zone districts. So SA1 is in the pink. I will note that one portion of the pink over here on the right is one of the things that we're talking about amending this evening. That has been shown to be topographically difficult, if not impossible, to build on. And so we're proposing to put that back into green for open space area right there. Then you've got SA2, which is in the orange, which is makes up a portion of, well, I'll get to that, and then SA3 in the red. Phase 1 has a little bit of each of these zone districts in it, a little bit of 1, 2, and 3. Next slide. This is sort of an overview of the affordability components. You may recall from when we did this ordinance a couple of years back, this breakdown shows where in the blue, in the big circle here in the middle, the blue represents the restricted affordable units. The orange are the non-income-based workforce housing units, so not based off of AMIs, simply restricted to folks who work for Chaffey County employers. There might be a little bit of additional flexibility there for retirees who have worked in the county as well. And then the market rate housing makes up that 25% in the gray. The other smaller yellow and green bubble represents the breakdown of the affordable restricted units, provides the AMI ranges for rental units and the AMI ranges for sale units. Of course, I brought my bad glasses, so I'm going to put on my good glasses so that'll help me actually see what's on the screen. Oh, wow, great, that's beautiful. The intention initially was for approximately half of all the units out there to be either rental or for sale, so no less than 40% of either. both across the entire development and from phase to phase. And we'll get into some of the proposed differences with those. But let's go on to the next slide. So a little bit of context here as far as the overall development strategy for the South Arc neighborhood. Again, the city owns it. The plans have been to build out phase one backbone infrastructure. Again, the water, the wastewater in those streets, using the grant funds that we've received from the state, some through federal funding, as well as additional monies coming from Colorado Mountain College and from Chaffey County, as well as our own funds coming out of the Affordable Housing Fund. That work is in progress. We contracted with Y&K, a local developer, and they started up that work back in November and have made significant progress on it, primarily because they haven't had to deal with too many weather issues this particular winter. The next step would be to issue RFQs to potential developers to build out phase one, probably through the sale of bulk lots, chunks of phase one at market or potentially below market costs. And we would, of course, engage in development agreements with them to meet various levels of affordability per the parameters there. David Starnes, who is with Civistruct Consulting, he is our owner's rep for this particular project, and I'm going to call him up in just a little bit to elaborate on some of these elements. The next part of it to point out, though, is that we do expect additional public and nonprofit housing partner involvement. So CMC, as part of the agreement that we have with them to help us build out the infrastructure, we are going to transfer some land to them, and they intend to build housing units out there for their students who also generally tend to be part of our workforce. They have like a 36 unit model that they intend to put in there, at least one of those in the coming years. And then, probably going to repeat this strategy, especially if it works well, right? In phase one, we'll probably end up doing something similar in phases 2 and 3. But there are certainly costs involved. So let's go to the next slide. So David, along with, conversations with staff, and then of course talking to a bunch of developers, architects, and financial institutions, has helped us identify a number of the challenges, a number of the sticking points of the current ordinance that's in place as far as actually getting this developed out. Some of those include the simple fact that infrastructure that was originally estimated to cost about $7.1 million for phase one has come in at least 20% higher than that. So that causes some challenges as far as where that money's coming from and potential needs to for the city to reimburse itself along those lines through lot sales. Some of the affordability requirements in general, the timing of delivering those affordable units, especially if you have multiple developers out there each doing their own processes and trying to make it reasonable as far as delivering those affordable units. Obviously, today's environment when it comes to interest rates and capital markets being a challenge over even just a few years ago. There is some lack of clarity in the original ordinance that we needed to clear up as far as the individual standards and the processes. And then there's questions out there as far as the housing types that are actually needed for this community. And I'll mention that there is in the background a housing needs assessment going on at the county level for all the municipalities in the county in general to help identify some of this. However, we don't anticipate the results of that until sometime this summer. So that further complicates some of the issue, but we'll try to incorporate that information as we have it. So in your staff report, we laid out 4 different areas for amendments to the PD modification, including general clarifications, those architectural and dimensional standards, the affordability that we're talking about, and then the development review procedures, i.e. what processes do you need to go through in order to be able to get to building permit. We'll start off with general clarifications and just go through we'll go through this the specifics, but I'm going to be fairly quick in covering this because there's a lot of them. So updates to the exhibits. We showed you one as far as that open space and those zone districts being swapped out. They're really kind of interchangeable, exhibits B and D. ADU caps. We originally had a cap at 30 ADUs on the entire development. State law legislation went in that basically said you cannot limit, even in PDs, the number of ADUs that can be built on, as long as they're allowed via the dimensional standards and all. So we're going to be proposing taking those out to meet state law, clarifying that in certain situations, we're talking about single-family detached versus attached. Changing, one change to the street types in regards to alleys. This was something that was actually already approved via an insubstantial modification that was done administratively. We just want to incorporate it back into the PD more generally. And then some minor grammatical edits in there. Next slide. On the architectural and dimensional standard side, we were talking about clarifying side setbacks, especially for attached units. It's always been inferred within our code, but we want to make sure that it's very clear in this particular PD. Providing a little bit of a change for the minimum density in the SA2 zone. That was really just, I think, a mathematical error, and it's a fairly minor change there to make sure that the size of the lots that were actually already platted meet the minimum density requirements. And then some minor language changes as far as roof form, courtyards, front door design, to provide a little bit more flexibility for potential developers. All right, probably the biggest chunk of all the proposed changes, the affordability and workforce side of things. Right now, as I mentioned, the project is planned to be 50% affordable restricted. That, as David can get into a little bit more, is proving to be extremely challenging for developers and financiers, et cetera, to be able to support and see how it might feasibly be done. So what we are proposing is a shift from 1 out of 2 units being affordable throughout the project and from phase to phase to 1 out of 3. 50% down to 33%. In addition to that, there's some confusing language. It's not 100% sure the original intent of the language, but we wanted to clarify that any units built and managed by public or nonprofit entities, including affordable housing developers, CMC, the city, the county, whoever it may be, do in fact count towards the overall affordability. So would count towards that 33%, for instance, in the case, and then there's some stipulations that they go to either Chaffey County workforce or be for Colorado Mountain College students. Lastly, on this slide anyways, as I mentioned, there's 25% of the units slated to be for non-income-based workforce members. And the proposal is to reduce that from 25% down to 10% across the entire development and per phase. This primarily comes back to the fact that it's a model that hasn't been proven yet here in Chaffey County, and it is made especially difficult because the relative market rate price for housing is not quite as different from the affordable housing prices as it is in some of the other communities, other mountain communities like Vail and Aspen, et cetera. It's that gap there in those locations are much greater, and so it makes a lot more sense in those communities. We're not sure if it makes sense here, but we'll get into a little bit more of that in a bit. Next slide. So again, back to the flexibility side of things and being responsive to whatever the housing types needs are of the community, proposing a reduction of a minimum of 40% for either rental or for sale units down to 25%. So at worst, at minimum, you would have 25% of one and 75% of another. That doesn't mean that they can't be better mixed than that, but this just provides a little bit more flexibility should the need prove to be one greater than the other. And then the timing, talked about that a little bit as far as these bulk lot developments and making sure that one developer is not wholly dependent on another developer. So currently, the language states that 1 in 3 COs has to be for an affordable unit or one of these non-income based units. And we're proposing expanding that to 1 out of 6 within a specific bulk lot development, so that, again, one developer is not reliant upon another developer bringing in their affordable housing unit, before they can get their COs. But I will underscore the fact that the AMIs that were proposed, rentals between 30 and 100%, and for sale units between 60 and 140%, that is not changing. We're not proposing to change that at this time. So that graphic you saw earlier, which was split up a little bit more into quarters, this is more or less how that would end up looking. So at maximum, you would have, again, over the entire development and phase to phase, up to 57% market rate units, maximum, and a minimum of 33% restricted affordable units, and a minimum of 10% of those non-income based units. David will speak a little bit to this as well. This does not really account for some of the potential incentives that developers may receive, other incentives that they may receive when they engage with the city in building out these units, if they provide additional affordable housing or workforce units. And then the yellow and green bubble is just representing the fact that it's changing from minimum of 40% down to minimum of 25% when it comes to the rental units or the for sale units. Next slide. The last category of changes has to do with development review procedures. Really, the big picture, just trying to clarify, again, what steps developers would need to go through in order to be able to submit building permit applications. And we clarified some of the principal uses permitted. We discussed a little bit more detail the procedure if it was going to administrative review, which would be in most cases, especially given the development agreements that we would have with the developers, but also if it needed to go to this board or to council, what that would look like. And there were actually, as we looked into it closer, there were a couple small omissions of certain housing types that we actually do want to see and had planned for in the various zone districts. So specifically, like multifamily in SA2 was accidentally omitted. So we're putting that back into the PD. So this is an amendment to a previously existing PD modification. We have review standards that we need to use to come up with a recommendation. There's 10 of them, and spread out across our code, 3 different spots, but compliance with the code in general, compliance with other regulations such as that of the city, the state, and the federal folks, compliance with prior approvals, so that the old PD modification, does this fit within the intent, the original intent of the original PD modification, and then consistency with any other adopted plans. Staff's review is that it does meet each of these 4. Next slide. It is technically a rezoning or an amendment to that rezoning. Is it consistent with a comprehensive plan? Is it consistent with the purpose of the original PD? And is it allowed by the zoning and compatible with the surrounding zone districts, land uses, neighborhood character, et cetera? Staff feels that it has met each of these particular criteria. And then lastly, does the PD modification request address a unique situation, provide substantial development or benefit rather to the city? In this particular case, really what it comes down to is, does this help make the project developable versus just having infrastructure that stays out there undeveloped in the long run? Does it meet the other applicable standards of the code that are not modified by the PD application? Obviously, this is a very mostly affordable or largely affordable project, and so well above that of our typical inclusionary housing. And number 10, providing a variety of housing types and densities. As I mentioned before, this is a fairly dense neighborhood and does provide everything from single-family detached all the way up to multifamily apartments that may be over 20 units each. So staff's recommendation would be, in general, to approve this particular amendment to the original PD modification. I've highlighted the motion there because it is a little bit different than what is in your staff report. It would be a little bit more accurate, and that would be what would be brought on to City Council. So with that all said, I want to bring up David Starnes and have him talk a little bit about what he has learned, and then we can go into questions and discussion.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. So my name is David Starnes. I am the principal and owner of Civistructs Strategy and Development. So I'm a consulting firm based in Boulder County. I've worked as a former local government redevelopment manager. I manage the Urban Renewal Authority for the city of Longmont, and I've also worked as a developer. So I think as part of my role here is to help provide a kind of market-based private sector perspective, because I think what you have is a pretty ambitious project. I think it's very well versed, obviously, in terms of the housing crisis that's not just in Chaffee, but in Colorado in general. And with the city owning all this land, really providing a directive for affordable housing and market-rate housing is sorely needed. So I got engaged in this in early January. I had extensive outreach with local developers, lenders who finance most of the projects here in Salida in terms of housing projects, and as well as architects to kind of really bring back to speed for this PD, because ultimately the goal is to build housing. The city has got grant funds to put in infrastructure, which is key. That's a cost that a developer wouldn't have to pay. So hypothetically, it lowers the cost, makes the project more viable. But with this PD, there's lots of layers in this thing. And so the goal is really to make this thing implementable, because the fear is if we put out an RFQ for developers and no one responds, it doesn't meet the goal. So really kind of working closely with the private sector and with the city, with the tools that the city has in terms of incentives, in terms of the lot pricing, we're hopeful that we can really provide an opportunity to find the right developers as part of different lot sales, because it's 55 lots, just 10 single family, 39 townhomes, and some multifamily lots, because there's going to be different buyers here and different users building different housing types. It'll be single family, it'll be townhomes, it'll be duplexes, it could be apartments. And again, wrapped in all this, you have some market and some affordable. So it's a comprehensive plan, but the goal is to really make this thing implementable. And the PD here is your base case. There's the city has as another layer through the RFQ process, where the city, as part of this thing, we can identify criteria that the city gives additional incentives to provide additional affordable. For example, you could lower the lot pricing for a developer that instead of doing 1/3, they may do half. So you can price it such that you could find a developer to do half versus 1/3. So what's in the code now, or in the PD now, is the base case. So I just want to emphasize that there's additional opportunities to kind of increase that affordability levels through the the competitive process through selecting the developers. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I don't really have any questions, but I have, as Bill knows, I have some, I guess, concerns. I mean, I don't really take issue with most of what's here. I think it's needed. And I do understand that the deed restricted income qualified properties are harder to finance than others. So I understand that going down to a minimum might be, and I want to make sure it does say minimum in there, because point A does not say minimum. But anyway, what I hate to see is a reduction in the market rate workforce properties that we had decided would be reserved for our community. And by doing so would limit the number of people buying second homes from elsewhere. So that's my biggest issue personally. I mean, I hate to see it go down at all, but I understand the financial situation that we're in and the general economy. But that would be something that I would really hate to see, 10%. I know you said it's a minimum, but most times when you have something like that, that's a minimum and you put it out for bid, they're going to take the minimum. They oftentimes don't advance that. So I would like to see more of a reservation somehow, whether it's a deed restriction or whether it's and Bill and I had a short email about this, whether it's a first right of refusal or, somehow be able to prioritize the people who live in Chaffey County as in terms of the first pass. So that's my big ask. Happy to get your feedback.
Yeah, so thank you. It's a very valid question. And, as part of my outreach, I did speak with developers in terms of some of this, right of first refusal. I think I guess what I view is it's a calibration. This is a risk assessment in terms of managing what the city's goals are for housing and providing housing for the local Chaffey County workforce. And at the same time, making a project financeable and implementable. And some of the kind of comments I received, I think there's a project here or elsewhere in Chaffey that did that right of first refusal and did not have any opportunities. It was very challenging to find the local Chaffey workforce willing to do this. I think in Chaffey County, there's as Bill mentioned, there is a smaller gap now between market and affordable, particularly at the higher AMI level. When you hit to 140 to 160, it's very close. And so that smaller gap, if you're a buyer, you're just gonna go for the market rate for the resale value and sort of be deed restricted.
Right, well, I'm actually referring to the market rate
Yes.
group that would be reserved for Chaffey County, not the income
Okay, yes.
qualified. The income qualified I get.
Yep.
But the other ones are the same. I mean, we said that they would be market rate units for people who live here. So that's the piece of the pie that I'm
Sure.
trying to.
Yeah,
Challenge.
again, my initial thought is trying to balance the getting responses to the RFQ. And what I've heard from other developers is at that higher level of Chaffey County, they've had really difficult time finding buyers at that workforce level willing to do it. And so I think this is something you can also do as part of the RFQ process. Again, the second level, not in this base case with the PD modification, but again, additional incentives. If you are a developer buying a bulk lot of, say, 8 lots, if you're willing to do, say, 25%, the city will be willing to reduce that price of that lot sale by X, thousands of dollars as additional incentive.
So if that's the case, why not say that up front?
I think we just want to provide the additional incentive in that later phase potentially, but, again, it could be, if you do it initially, it may limit potential interest of developers willing to respond if they see the affordable workforce requirement plus the Chaffey County workforce requirement. Again, this is based on kind of initial conversations that I had with the developers and some of the lenders who work in this arena.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have, and I think you were just getting to this. Essentially, you're telling us as is, this is unimplementable. And is this kind of just based on vibes, or you've had like 12 conversations with developers and they've said, hell no, or you talked to 3 bankers and they've said this, that, and the other? Like, can you give me some background why you're kind of writing off the initial plan?
I think, I'm not writing off the initial plan. These are just, again, my thoughts.
Well, you're
on-
telling us to change it right off the bat. Like, we haven't even gone to bid with anything yet.
I think this is, the goal is to provide the flexibility to get a market rate response. And yes, some of my initial discussions with developers and lenders, these are some of the things that they pointed out that would, in their opinion, would make it very difficult to get a response, particularly with the concurrency requirement of, if you're a developer building market rate homes on, say, 8 lots, and you have to wait for another developer to do the affordable, that lender raises that as a red flag, and they would not, lend on that project. So I think we're trying to balance the the market responsiveness, because the goal was to get some responses from the developers. And then as part of the negotiation process, again, there's a purchase and sale agreement that would follow. You can kind of negotiate and work out the details of what the incentive package would look like, but is to get, some desired of the uses that, again, we're trying to balance the city's desire for affordable workforce housing, which is sorely needed, with the desire of the development community to be willing to respond to a project. So these are just some of the initial.
Right, but again, we haven't even tried yet. And I guess to that end, I was reading the text in here about the CO thing. The way I thought I heard you describe it, Bill, was this kind of applies to all the developers on this plot. The way it reads in this document to me seems like it applies to each developer individually, so I'll
Right.
just flag that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. As it's
Okay.
written in the ordinance right now, it's 1 out of every 3 COs would have to be an affordable unit. And so if within phase 1, for instance, it's spread out amongst multiple developers.
The
then
affordable units, you mean? Or,
all of the units, like the entire project. If it got, say 8 lots were sold to one developer, 15 lots to another, an apartment complex lot to another, they would be interdependent upon each other as far as those units coming in. We would technically need to say, okay, we have 2 market rate units that have already gotten their COs. The next one has to be an affordable unit, or we
So it's-
can't provide COs to any other market rate units.
I get what you're
So
saying.
what this
okay.
does is it breaks it up, depending on how the lots get sold in what we call a bulk lot development, then you have those 8 lots, that 15 lots, and then that apartment complex. Well, each developer is responsible for meeting that number, in this particular case being proposed at 1 out of 6.
Okay.
Providing a little bit of flexibility within it.
So I have, thank you.
Yeah.
My other question here is, we've talked a little bit about using the RFQ process to prioritize, pick developers that we think fit our values, all that kind of stuff. Do you have a scoring matrix or something like that that reflects, whatever our city's development priorities are?
Not yet, we haven't developed that yet.
I mean, every developer I've ever met ever wants more flexibility, so I'm like, which I totally get, like we all do. But I'm just a little nervous because we get torn apart every time we say affordable housing, and then we back off. Like, this is not a great look, in my opinion.
That would certainly be built into any RFQ process. We do that with any RFQ that we do issue from the city. So there would be a scoring matrix and.
I'm just saying, if we had that now, it might provide some comfort as to how we're loosening these standards, but here are the criteria we're gonna use to evaluate, the 4 developers we get responding. Just kind of an idea.
I will say affordability is definitely going to be one of the biggest ones.
Right.
And
There's no getting
I
around
think
that.
it's like worth noting, just taking a step back and seeing how ambitious those original numbers
Oh, yeah.
are. And what we're stepping down to is still far above
I
what
don't
we're
disagree,
requiring.
but we all agreed on some ambitious goals. Period.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
And I think they're proving to be a little ambitious, is what
Well,
they're saying.
and I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. If someone were to ask me on the street, why did you back off? Like, because the developers asked me to, or because, again, like, we talked to 3 bankers and they don't really think it's workable, like something a little more.
Yeah. I think the other thing to keep in mind with this is that the initial concept was that we'd be able to do the infrastructure at a certain price. And given the fact that much of that funding was coming from grants and from partner contributions, that we'd be able to sell or even potentially give away lots at extremely low prices. Problem is that infrastructure has proven to be much more expensive than anticipated, which means that the city is now on the hook for putting more money in that it needs to recoup as far as that affordable housing fund, which gives us less flexibility as far as the lot sale prices, which then gives the developer less flexibility on providing affordable housing. It's
Okay.
a domino effect.
I've got a series of questions, and again, the numbers on the affordable housing is really kind of the big challenge, and I'll be the new guy. Yay. So I don't have a lot of the background, but thinking about the overall PUD, actually going back to when the original Vanderveer purchase happened in 2004, it was for the water And then it evolved to become an opportunity for affordable housing when the city went to CMC and for grants and to the county for partnerships. It was based on this premise of a very significant portion of the overall development was going to be for affordable housing for locals. And that's where I'm a little bit, not a little bit, I'm really kind of questioning on how this fits with that when we're looking at the PUD review criteria. Just looking at the overall, if we're going from the original development, if we're basing on 400 units, that was 100 market rate units. If we're increasing that to 57%, that's 228 market rate units compared to only 172 affordable units. And that's a significant shift in what the original premise of the PUD was as it was presented to the community, as well as the city's partners in this development and the granting funding sources. You mentioned the infrastructure was going from 7.1 million, 20% more was the bid, so that's an additional $1.42 million. Okay, yes, that's a substantial number, but I don't know that gets to that balance point in the finances that shows 1.42 million. How many affordable units is that worth in order to convert that to market? 128 additional market rate units seems like a pretty significant modification. I mean, that's more than double where it's only 20% more infrastructure. And I do understand certainly the financing and the capital challenges and some other things. I would feel a lot more comfortable with this if we actually had the housing needs assessment completed, and I understand that's not gonna be done till the summer, but per Dan's comment, I think it'd be worthwhile to maybe put that RFQ out now and see what responses you get. And further, I guess, before, finish real quick, I would also be a lot more comfortable if these changes were made only to phase one rather than the entire PUD, because I'm presuming this is gonna be at least a 10-year build-out. It's a multiple year build-out, and if we're making that significant a change based on the information that we have today, that's a pretty significant deviation from the original PUD in my view.
Just to pick up on the timing real quick here, when are you planning to issue an RFQ? And I guess as it relates to the housing needs assessment, and I guess my other, I don't want the city to waste their time and money either. Like, we could refuse to do this and force the city to go with a proposal that you're telling we don't like and see if it works, and odds are it won't. Like, you guys are professional, smart people. Like, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, how quickly are we trying to move here?
I think from a timing, because I understand, this is going to be an ordinance, so it's going to go to council in 2 readings, so that won't be done until April. So the goal, the thought was RFQ wouldn't go out until the ordinance is adopted, because you don't want to, because things may change, and so you want to provide predictability as part of RFQ, like, here's the adopted ordinance, this is what the requirements are, so the developers know that this is what they have to follow. So, from now until then, we'll be working on the RFQ, but, we won't release it until after the city council, assuming it goes to city council at a later date.
But that's still not that far away, so like late spring?
Yeah, late
early
spring.
Summer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I could just comment,
If we're going to kind of be moving into discussion, I think we do have a member in the
Oh, this is
audience.
true. We should-
It is a public hearing. Has anybody signed up? Is there anybody in line?
There's nobody online.
And I'd like to just open up, give anybody, Mr. Armstrong, are you here to speak?
No, I'm here to listen,
Okay.
because this is a complex problem.
it is a comment.
If I had an answer to it, we would have shared it with you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close that. So now
Yeah.
we can just continue with discussion and
Yeah,
questions.
I just had a comment to tag along on what Don was saying about the balance. That's, I absolutely understand the lack of ability to finance deed-restricted properties for income-qualified people. We've seen that ever since we put the IH ordinance in. We've Reed McCullough and Chafee Housing Trust and the Housing Authority. We've been all through that. I get it. And for that reason, I think that going down to the 33% in the deed-restricted income-qualified properties makes sense. because we want to get them built. We could put it out there and say, no, we want to hold true, but the job is to build houses, to see results. The balance to me is in that market rate, Chaffee County resident property. I mean, we had 25%, it's going down to 10, and I don't understand why we have to do that. I don't think having a right of refusal or a period of time, even though I know West End had a little trouble with that. This is different. We don't know what kind of marketing they did. They weren't city-owned. We have a stake in this. So to me, having something that protects a larger percentage of those properties for people who live here at market rate, it goes to the missing middle. We've talked a lot about that with people that are making 200% AMI. They don't make enough necessarily to buy, but it would be market rate. But maybe this would be incentive if they knew that it was for the residents. And I think that it would help us on the street to understand that, yes, we are holding up our end of this. We are providing homes for people who live here. We're lowering maybe the amount of deed restricted properties for income qualified, but we're maintaining our commitment to having 25% for the Chaffee County residents. So I think that might be a place to balance those things.
Could you also consider using those ADUs to fill in some of those gaps? Would a ADU that's deed restricted or rent restricted count toward an affordable unit?
Currently, ADUs are not allowed to serve that purpose throughout the entire city, and it's, I believe it's stipulated in here that they're not to be meant for that, so that would have to be a change to the PD.
Okay. And I guess, just from the perspective of, if you make this change, you kind of have an agreement with the community that you were going to build affordable housing. They passed a short-term rental tax based on that. And I agree that, it does not look good to be backing off this much when that was what the purpose was. Yeah. And what happens when the housing assessment comes out and it looks worse? And now we've backed off, are we going to have to turn around and go the other way?
Which is why I support what Don was saying. I had it written down too about maybe making this apply just to phase one. And then we can go on with the other phases. We'll see how the affordability factor is. We can see how it's worked in phase one and adjust from there.
Is that a possibility to separate it out?
Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly.
we can totally look at that. I just kind of from the staff perspective, give a different perspective than Bill, whose perspective is completely legitimate, and we talk about it all the time.
Of course.
But I, one of the reasons that the city decided his performance evaluation is tomorrow, if anybody. Sorry. No, one of the reasons that the city, and I take the actually full responsibility for this, decided to move forward with an owner's rep on this project is because we understood how big of a commitment it was and that we are not in a position to mess it up, right? This is something that the community has put their faith and trust in the city of Salida to move forward, to develop housing for our community, for people who live here and who want to stay here. So we take that extremely serious. I take that extremely seriously. So bringing forward these recommendations for modifications was not something that was done lightly, and David Starnes spent a lot of time talking to financial institutions, local developers, and others that he's had a lot of experience with to understand what was going to be successful here in Salida, because the last thing that we want to do is put $7.5/8 million worth of infrastructure in the ground out there and get a lot of the pushback that we're getting from the community, tearing up open space there and have it sit. And we don't want to see that happen. We want to see houses get built. So we challenged David to come to review this and come forward with recommendations that still meet the vision that the city has and does not discount the 300 people plus people who came to the steam plant, but also putting a bit of a reality check on the promises that were made that may not come to fruition. So why not wait until we have put out the RFQ? Because there's a time commitment here. The infrastructure has to be done by the end of the summer, beginning of fall, in order for us to move forward. The community is expecting us to move forward with phase 2 and 3 infrastructure development as well. We have agreements with multiple partners and other partners who are asking us about what the rest of the development is going to look like. So there's an expectation on our side that we will actually move forward with development and get houses built. So that was our decision, to bring it forward and look at ways not to strip the PD, not to strip the development, but to allow for flexibility within the development. One thing that I don't think we've talked enough about is the second phase, and Dan, I appreciate you bringing it up. We have not created that rubric yet for what that RFQ or RFI process should look like. Happy to sit down, or you guys can tell us what you want that to look like, but that's really a mechanism then for the city of Salida to find development partners that will actually bring forward the vision that we want, but open it up enough through the PD to allow for flexibility that if something is going to work for us that forwards that vision, that we are not hamstrung by our own requirements to not be able to move forward. So I just wanted to provide, I don't come to these meetings very often, so I had to make sure
but you
that
should.
I got on the microphone. So happy to answer questions, but I want like an understanding of what perspective at the larger level came from.
Go ahead, Dan.
You want-
No, you're the veteran.
I just want to like zero in on that scheduled timeline was very helpful. So this RFQ process, late spring, early summer.
Right,
Work
so.
on infrastructure all summer, and
Yep.
it will be done for phase 1 like fall-ish.
Correct.
And the intent is to roll into phase 1 of development as soon as that infrastructure is complete.
Correct. So if
And
we look
phase-
at, right, if this body decides to, with amendments or whatever, recommend approval to city council, that public hearing will be April 7th. And 30 days after that, as long, barring any other issues, right, the ordinance goes into effect. So during that 30-day process, we can be putting out that RFQ, having people, having developers submit their proposals, and then when that 30-day is up, we'll have an opportunity then to review those proposals with that rubric and identify the development partners that we're looking for.
And just one more follow-up question, and then phase 2 and 3 just kind of follow naturally after that, like the infrastructure on phase 2 will begin while phase 1 housing is being built?
Fingers crossed. I mean, that's part of the process, right? We don't have a source of funding for phase 2 and 3 infrastructure right now. So part of his job is to help us get that by
Okay,
selling
got it.
lots. But yes,
Thank you.
yes.
And do you, so just adding on to that and that timeline, and that's very helpful, and also really focuses me to, let's maybe consider this for phase 1 only and not for phase 2 and 3, because that is, a lot of things can change in 2
Right.
years.
Absolutely.
Because I'm gonna assume the projected build-out for phase 1 for 150 units, that's probably gonna be 2, 3, 4 years. So,
And I would just add to, is there's a market question of related to absorption. In Chaffey County, there's a lot of housing under construction.
Right.
Hundreds and hundreds of townhomes.
Right.
You know, here in this phase 1, there's 39 townhome lots, 2 duplex lots, 10 single families. So there's gonna be a market question from the developers, like, I'm already building 200 townhomes in Poncha or BV or whatever else, or even in Salida. So how much can, you know, this South Arc realistically absorb in terms of what developers who may be, you know, just, they're just maxed out. And so it's like, it's gonna be a question of balancing. I mean, I think the goal is to find local home builders and developers, and I talked to a number of them here to gauge their interest, but, you know, there may be some developers or home builders from outside of Chaffey, I don't know, Colorado Springs, Front Range, that are not in this market, but could be well capitalized and could bring a good product, I think that hopefully meets the vision. I mean, we have the design guideline there in terms of how it should look and all that kind of good stuff. So just trying to balance, I think, local priorities with local home builders who may be at capacity or not with some of the other market demands too.
Well, and when you talk about, you know, the market rate prices, and we talk about homes for people who live here, I think part of the conversation that often arises is if you're opening up market rate sales to anyone, people can come in from outside of our area with an awful lot of money, and locals can't compete with that. So again, why I'm really going to lobby for keeping that 25% reserve for people who live here. There may not be that much difference between the market rate, as you were saying, Bill, but I think that when people come in from elsewhere, whether it be Aspen, California, wherever, they've sold a house for $5 million, they can outbid, they can have cash. Our local workforce doesn't stand a chance. And we have often talked about that missing middle, where 160% AMI on up, they don't, they may be able to squeeze out something to buy a house, but not if they're up against somebody that's really wealthy with cash. So personally, I would propose that we make this for phase one only and see where it goes. I would also propose keeping the 25% reserve for market rate properties for residents in addition to the 33, and then allow us to go down to the 33% because we know that those are really hard to finance. And I think that any developer that, this is a city project, basically. And so it's up to us, to staff, to planning, to council, to all of us to collectively to make sure that we're promoting this, that we're selling it, that we are making it a success, because we've got a lot at stake. So that would be my proposal, if anybody wants a motion.
Not yet. I still have, I actually have a number of questions, but that's, I appreciate where you're going with that.
Well,
And
we might have more.
I do have a question for David, just on some of the folks. When you were talking to financiers and whatever else, did you talk to any LIHTC developers or developers that specialize in LIHTC, especially for that affordable component?
Yeah, so I'm also the owner's rep in San Luis Valley for the Town Center doing a LIHTC project right now. So it's a 9% tax credit application. Somewhere I think there's a 9% tax application here for your senior housing. So yeah, I am familiar in that realm in terms of the competitiveness of the LIHTC and how is that. I'm sorry. Did you have a question specifically?
Yeah, no, I think that was the
Yeah.
question. Did you consider LIHTC as a potential financing to meet that?
So
what's already in the PUD?
That's a good question. So here, with the thing, there's 3 multi-family lots here, lots 52, 53, and 54, that could accommodate, you have CMC with their lot. But hypothetically, a LIHTC developer, again, they're in competition with the existing application here. So I don't know how, with Chaffey County and with Chaffa, how they would view that. But yeah, a LIHTC developer could come in to do that kind of 30 to 6% AMI level, which is the 9% or 6% tax credit. But again, the big piece is the missing middle, the 80 to 120 AMI for the rent stuff, and a little bit higher for sale. And that's traditionally, as you know, with Prop 123, the hardest thing to finance. I mean, there's that kind of middle income tax credit that got rolled out at the state level to help incentivize developers to kind of build that at the higher AMI level. I think still the proof is not there, or it's still being worked out to see. Again, it's the hardest piece to finance at that AMI level that doesn't have the deeper subsidy as a tax credit, as a typical 9 or 6% tax credit deal.
No, I certainly understand that. I spend go ahead.
I would say, but there's partners with Housing Trust and the Housing Authority. They did one up in BV called The Crossing. That's kind of combining with providing that kind of affordable housing with market rate housing, with partnering with the developer to do that. So that could be an option here for Salida. So I think that'd be a good one as part of the outreach, is to kind of find those developers that partner with the nonprofit housing entities to help deliver market rate and affordable rental housing or for sale.
So building on that, and I appreciate that answer, and I think that you mentioned the middle income tax credit that still has some bugs or some questions to be answered on how the state's going to actually roll that out and how that's going to be effective. In the rubric that Dan mentioned, as far as looking at developers and their individual proposals, I'm assuming you're going to parcel this out not as the entire phase one, but into a series of parcels. Is that generally, what's your thought?
Yeah, I
there?
mean, we haven't finalized like kind of the RFQ land strategy, because I don't think there's a developer that's going to take all 45 lots, and so it's like, okay, the city, because some of these are divided into like 10 single family, you have 8 plexes, and you have 12 plexes. You as a developer, depending on your capacity, you may respond for just doing an 8-plex. But additional, if you want to, just let us know like which bulk lots that you're interested in and kind of see how the responses come in. And as part of the criteria, if the developer says, hey, I'm willing to do a 12-plex, but, you know, I'm willing to do 50% affordable if I can get these lot sales reduced on those other 50% versus the 33, that can be that incentive that gets you to that higher affordability level beyond what's in the current, you know, kind of PD as a
And
strategy.
I certainly understand the time constraints that the city's under. We want a desire to get this RFQ out as soon as possible because of that construction season and the need for respondents to that RFQ to have predictability. I don't necessarily want to try to develop your rubric or review your rubric that you're considering that. That's David and Christy and Bill and David and that group's responsibility. I guess from my perspective, though, some of the things that I would strongly encourage to be in there is that affordability piece. As you as a developer, how are you going to exceed the minimum that's in the PUD, whatever finally gets approved in this PUD? How are you as a developer going to partner with the Housing Authority, the Housing Trust, the CMC, any other community partners in order to do that? What are your financing ideas? And really have the developers explain that in their individual RFQ responses.
And I'll just add on to, so it's very important and valid question. So, you know, the balance is going to be as reducing the lot prices based on some percent for the affordable, because the goal is of those lot prices is to reinvest for phase 2 and phase 3 infrastructure. I know David Lady's here, he's probably like,
Right.
you know.
It's
So there's a
free.
number there, so it's trying to figure out, you know, reducing that, so that there is money coming in to help fund the remaining infrastructure for phase 2 and phase 3, which is, as I understand, is unfunded? Partially unfunded?
Fully unfunded.
100% unfunded.
Fully unfunded.
Fully unfunded. So, yeah, so I'll be running numbers in terms of, you know, we have an appraiser as part of the consultant group to help with the kind of the lot pricing strategy. So kind of figuring out what's kind of that median that works well with using the proceeds to fund infrastructure, but at the same time, getting a potential higher level of affordability.
Thank you.
I wanted to step in real quick, just talk to the LIHTC piece real quick. So yes, we built it into the original PD modification that the rental AMIs could go down as low as 30%. LIHTC generally covers between 30 and 60%, so that's absolutely an option. At the same time, and not to throw cold water on it, but we actually have one project here in Salida in the hopper at the moment that we just submitted for. And generally speaking, rural areas only tend to get LIHTC awards once every several years, let's say. And so you're always up competing against other communities. I do believe BV does have one sort of in the works for maybe a couple of years down the line. We don't know who else might be thinking about it as well. So just to say that it's not a guarantee, obviously, that that would materialize, and it could be many years from now down the line. One other piece, then going back to Francie's point about the first right of, or about the workforce housing, the non-income-based workforce housing, not pushing back on what you're bringing up, but just simply adding more information to the discussion. What we have heard out there is that if you are going to be considering purchasing one of these units, these restricted units that are restricted just for workforce, in all likelihood, the price isn't going to be really substantially lower than the rest of the market. There will be some noticeable gap, I think, between it. The challenge is that you have a lot of folks around here who maybe have certain expectations about the value of the home that they're building, or that they're purchasing rather, and the ability to make money on it and everything else. They too would be subject to the same restrictions that the original developer is.
Right.
And so they are signing on by purchasing one of those lots to also go through the 90-day first right of refusal process. And therefore, they can only, in that time frame, sell to locals as well. So I think that's one of the reasons that we had this conversation, is that it's just a big unknown and a concern around really how many of these lots will actually be purchased.
Well, I'm okay with that. just so you know. You can prove that, it's okay.
I would also, just add to that point on the difference between a market with no deed restriction and a market with locals only restriction, for lack of a better term on that. I lived in another jurisdiction, Frisco and Summit County both. They did buy downs for deed restrictions and some things like that. Generally, their findings, and this would actually take a market analysis to be done here. I have not done that myself. I don't know if anybody at the city's done that yet. It was a 15% roughly drop in the value from market, no restriction, to market, local restriction. It also impacts the buyer pool, which is certainly one of the challenges as well. And that's unrestricted. You have unlimited market or unlimited potential. It's a much not a much smaller pool here. It's a larger pool than it was up there, thankfully. But it is a smaller pool. So it might take longer to sell that local restricted house at that lower price. And that's something that,
It's
again,
okay,
if you're
though. I
buying
mean-
it, it's a trade-off if
Yeah, but
it's something you're buying into.
But, you know, you have to understand too, that if the money's coming from out of state, a local buyer doesn't have the chance that they do. And I think we need to at least try to protect that local buyer.
Yeah.
You know, if it takes a little longer, I think we need to figure out how to do it. I have actually another unrelated question.
I'm
No.
just going to throw one more
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
of that, because what you just
Sure.
said reminded me,
Yeah.
and this is the other risk, is that if developers are not selling those local homes, they're not going to continue selling or building the affordable homes.
Sure.
So there is a potential there of having a little bit of conflict between the two, because if they're struggling there, they're going to stop until they're able to sell those other ones.
And that all goes to that individual market study that the developers, a competent developer would be doing, saying, okay, this is the product that I'm bringing, this is what's available, and this is what I can then propose for my absorption, knowing what else is out there. And I think that's, again, should be a very interesting discussion with those developers when they submit their RFQ responses.
Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and I think, Francie, you said this earlier, because, you know, built housing is better than unbuilt housing. So I'm kind of inclined, and I also, to back up, I'm so glad they hired you, Mr. Starnes. No, it just seems like you really have the expertise, so I'm inclined to trust you. And I guess if I had to choose between the 25%, 10% on the workforce housing and all three phases, like, I could be convinced to go to 10% for just phase one if we wanted kind of to demonstrate proof of concept. But like knee jerk, I kind of want to stick with 25%. But if you tell me, like, we really need to do 10%, like, we'll prove it in phase one, I could potentially get behind it. I just wanted to kind of air that.
Well, I think it's a lot easier to go down than up. So I would rather do the opposite. I'd rather go to the 25%, and if it's not working after a certain amount of time, we can have another discussion and lower it. But it's really hard to go up once you've come down.
Once the toothpaste is out of the
Right.
tube.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I could do that too, Francie.
Yeah.
I
I
just,
mean, the 33% from 50%, I get that. I get the financing component of that. We kind of have to, because we do want to get them built. But the other, it is a little bit of a risk, but I don't know, I feel like we have an obligation to our community to try. So to my next, this is just a point of clarification. Down in the weeds of the document, additional requirements. Yes, I think I understand this. It talks about the 33% of the units being permanently deed restricted, and then it talks about no fewer than 25% reserved for workforce housing rental units, no fewer than 25% reserved for affordable housing. I'm assuming that that's 25% of the 33%?
Yes, yeah, we're
Okay.
talking about, you're talking about the breakdown between
The
rental
breakdown,
and
right.
for sale
And
units.
is that flexible? So no fewer than, so it could be
75,
less or
25.
more of for sale or rental, right, of the
Yeah.
33%?
You need to have a
Okay,
minimum of 25% of one or the other,
okay.
or both, rather.
Right, and then just to make sure we understand that, and I think we do, that the affordable units will be made up not only of units that the developer is developing, the commercial developer, but also CMC, and also Chafee Housing Trust, and also the Housing Authority. And so we're giving them, if we keep the 25%, we're giving those builders, whatever they are, those entities, the opportunity to sell those properties as well. So that would be my only other concern. I'm ready for a motion if you guys
I
are.
have one more question.
I have a couple more too.
You get two
Why-
more.
why do we have-
You get one more, and then I'm making a motion.
Fair enough. I'm mostly just curious, why do we have this one section about roof lines that we're changing?
That's a good
Flat
question.
roofs.
Yeah, just to variety.
Yeah, well, you might recall, there was conversation when we did the original PD modification about the architectural integrity, especially for certain units at the south end of the PD and right along that ridge line. I mean, it bled into some other conversations where we were doing the land use code and trying to require that architectural diversity. We were seeing a lot of flat top roofs going everywhere, Poncha here in town. And it came up in some of the meetings as far as the roof forms, that folks would like diversity of those roof forms, not having just flat roofs across them all. So
Now we're allowing them.
well, this backs off a little bit on the requirements, but I think that also plays back into the RFQ as far as what would be encouraged strongly.
Flexibility.
Building forms and.
Yeah, and something that could be built into a development agreement to require that added diversity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, since I'm only allowed two questions, I'm gonna do it in multiple parts.
Oh, no.
I know.
Oh, wow, Tabor, we're fighting.
No, we're not going Tabor. CMC, which phase is the CMC used?
Phase one.
Phase
It
one.
is phase one.
Yeah,
So-
if we could pull up, actually, is it the entirety of that red block? or is it- Yeah, it's the one that Kristen's got her cursor on, right there. It's approximately 1.5, 1.6 acres,
Okay,
right there.
and I think I heard you say 36 units is generally what they're proposing, or?
Yeah, they have a 36 unit model, right, it's 36, okay, that they've done in a number of other communities. And they've discussed with us throughout this process, and they continue with that interest of building that model on this site with the potential of a second building down the line. Sure.
So-
And I would just clarify too.
More recently.
Yeah, so when I met with them, so I would just clarify, so it's not just for students, it's for employees and interestingly, alumni. So again, people that go to the school, they graduate, they want to stay in Salida. This is a potential, I think, opportunity. And again, 1.6 acres, you can fit more on a 36 plexer, but it depends on their funding thing. I mean, obviously,
Sure.
there's an MOU, existing MOU between the city and CMC for this, and they have a certain, time for build out, but I mean, seem very interested in hopefully, moving forward.
And I think that's wonderful, and I'm fully supportive of it, and I hope it does. So of the 150, the 36 are included in that 150 overall. So if I'm doing my math not correct, or doing my math correctly, if we're at that 33%, there'd be 50 deed restricted or 50 affordable units, and this would be 36 of them just by CMC. So the developers are only really on the hook for
Right,
24. No, 14.
my point.
14 potentially.
Yeah, it really depends on what gets written into those development agreements. And that's why we're trying to establish some of this baseline information around the timing, for instance, of the affordable units. But the intention is still to try to get, a minimum of 1 out of 4 or so from those developers with that little bit of flexibility on part of the city as far as the bulk lot sales. To work with them as necessary and kind of shift the lot sale amounts correspondingly.
So-
And also to, I think Bill mentioned, to spread it out, within the phase one. So it's all not concentrated on
Right,
one
we don't
lot
want
or
to build
two
a
lots.
ghetto. Right.
You're mixing rental and for sale with single-family, townhomes, and, say, apartments.
Which is excellent, and I appreciate that. And I guess I guess my biggest concern or question or comment related to that is if we go down to the numbers that that was proposed in the PUD amendment, out of 150 units then, we would have 36 units for CMC. We'd have 15 units that are the local market rate housing. We'd have 14 units that developers are providing, and we'd have roughly 90 market rate units. So again, if I'm doing my math right, but it seems pretty close to that at least. And again, it seems really the focus based on this PUD amendment, CMC is doing the majority of the workforce housing or the local deed restricted housing.
We don't know that.
Well,
We don't know that.
well, but it is part of that phase one.
It's a possibility, but
Yeah.
until we have a development plan, we don't know any of that.
Absolutely
So
true.
all we can do is focus on what we have in front of us
Mm-hmm.
and not go too far down the rabbit hole.
Very true, but if what's idealized, I guess, happens that way, there'd be
Yeah.
very, very few workforce housing units that are not available to or that are available to non-CMC employees, workers, whatever else. And that, I think that's maybe the heart of my concern with this first phase and those numbers.
It's still in the, so I think we still have in the bulk sale unit process, the 1 out of 3.
Right.
So I think your scenario is the minimum, when it could be more than that because of that requirement that we have written into this modification for bulk sales to developers.
And we're talking about 1 out of 6, actually. For
1
the
out of 6.
1 out of 6.
bulk sales.
And the purpose of that is to spread it out.
Right.
So that we won't be building, something where all of the affordable units are.
And I'm
in
fully
one
on board
place.
with that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the gross numbers.
Yeah, no, and we talked about this too, because we don't have CMC in each phase.
Right.
We have CMC in the first phase, and any additional, larger unit project is going to be wholly grant dependent down the line, which you just can't necessarily count on. You can pretty much count on CMC doing their project, but other ones down the line are a little bit more challenging. So I think it's a fair thing to bring up and to consider when we break down these numbers.
And for that reason, what you just explained is where I'd only, myself, only for phase one.
Yeah, I
for
think
these
only for
changes.
phase 1. I think we're in agreement on that.
Quick question for David Lady, since he's graced us with his presence. The ADU change, and just because the infrastructure was sized based on a very specific number of ADUs, did that increase in ADUs, one per potential for every lot, is that accounted for, and infrastructure is still sized for that?
I would say the 8-inch lot, so the sizing of mains out there is more than enough. 8 inch is kind of like the bare bones minimum. I'm very confident and we wouldn't have to go back and revisit the utility studies based off of just the density that's going in here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, while you're there, I just,
Greg has a
yeah, finally got a word in up here, jeez. Hey, I just wanted to go over just real quick and just confirm, because that was in here as with some changes on the streets. And could you maybe just give us a quick rundown on what?
Is this that type D street?
It's
Yeah.
a D,
Oh,
the
the
D
alley.
Street. Yeah, the alley.
Can you explain?
I was waiting for that to go down. Now, basically, we had planned in for the potential of courtyard developments, like
Right.
cottage housing style development, for instance. And this was just a clarification that alleys can serve as the frontage for the lots that get built through cottage style housing, because especially in that pink area down below along this hillside, these are all anticipated to be alley loaded.
And those are the 20-foot, like the 20-foot right away.
Yes, yeah. And so we're just stipulating that can serve as the frontage for those
For that
individual
lot.
lots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So-
Bill.
I had, good one, Bill. So I have just a clarification again on the percentage, wherever we land, the 25 or 10% on the workforce-based housing. Does that apply to for sale and rental, or just for sale? Because I'm not sure how you'd apply it
Not
exactly to
sure if
rentals. I guess you
we
could take a percentage.
stipulated that or not.
And it, yeah, I didn't know if it was stipulated at all in the original plan.
It's both.
Yeah, I think it is both. It doesn't stipulate.
Well, it's feasible for both, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, so again, that supports my desire to keep it at 25%. Mr. Chairman, are you ready for a motion? We can have further discussion if we need to after the motion is passed, or is after the motion
Sure,
is
let's do that,
seconded?
yeah.
Okay.
I just have something.
Oh, do you want to do it?
No,
first?
no, let's
Okay.
do the motion.
Bill, do you want to put Kristen, put the motion back up there?
And she actually corrected it even further there, so.
I can't read that.
I move to recommend.
Okay, yeah, okay.
City Council.
All right, I move to recommend to City Council the proposed amendment to the South Arc Neighborhood Plan Development Modification as proposed with two amendments, as it meets the intent of the applicable review standards and housing goals of the city. The two amendments that I propose would be to make this apply to Phase 1 only, and to keep the 25% market rate reserve for Chaffey County workforce in place. And I would say that we want to reserve that for sale units for 90 days. For rental units, I think we don't need that. I think the rental units go for themselves.
So is that 3 minutes?
I guess you could make that 3, yeah.
So then, just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
The 90-day first right of refusal clause would apply to for sale units.
For sale of the market rate 25% workforce housing.
And
And any development, any developer that's building rentals, they would have, well, I don't know how you do it with a rental, really.
I can answer.
Please.
Well, why don't we finish your motion?
Okay, that's the motion,
the
yeah. I need a second.
Dan, go ahead, please, because I mean,
Okay, so this is for Phase 1 only, to keep
25%.
local workforce housing at 25%, and then the 90-day first right of refusal on the for sale workforce housing.
That's right, and that's all we need.
I will
yeah.
second that.
Yeah. I think that's all we need.
Okay, we
don't
have a
need
motion and a second. Do you guys have that? With the proposed amendments?
Further discussion?
Any further discussion?
discussion, just to clarify, maybe Francie's question about the right of first refusal.
Yeah.
You can actually write it into a deed restriction. I've done this in a previous life.
Okay.
Where you write it in and it says it's for sale to local resident only. And if that local resident chooses to not reside there and rent it, then that is for rent to a local resident only, or local worker, or however,
Right.
so you can actually clarify
Yeah,
in
and I
the
think
single deed
that's
restriction.
part of what we would want to do, but I don't know that that needs to be in the motion.
I don't think it
Yeah.
does. That's more of a question for
I
you.
think that's our intent.
Yes.
Sure.
And I think.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
sure
and
Bill's
that
seen these
generally
too.
is covered through the Chaffey Housing Authority community
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yes, I agree.
So, question, I guess, where does 90-day right of first refusal come from? Is that in the code that I haven't gotten to? This
No,
may be a new
it's-
guy question.
It's in the ordinance itself.
The
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
the original ordinance.
The original ordinance had that 90-day.
Right.
So I'm not going to propose changing that. I would actually prefer to not have
No,
a
and
right
I
of
think
first
90
refusal.
days is sufficient. And if it doesn't happen in 90 days, then, the developer can raise the,
My personal preference from past experience is that 90-day right of first refusal gets just obliterated, lost in translation and whatever else. My preference would be no right of first refusal at all in the ordinance. However, since it's written in the existing ordinance, I'm not going to recommend that we change that
well,
at
and
this
I
time.
think it helps for the sale to the developers to have that hard stop.
The one question I would have with this, and this is maybe a question for Nina, if she could clarify. If, let's say that 90-day right of first refusal passes on that first sale, is it gone for the next sale, or is it still
No,
in
it
place?
stays.
It
deed
says
restricted.
reoccurring.
It will be reoccurring.
Deed
Thank you,
restricted.
that's what I was
Right.
wondering, okay.
And maybe we should say that, we
All right,
should say that in the motion.
let's stand.
Yeah, okay,
right.
great.
We have-
I'm done.
We have a motion and a
I'm ready to
second.
vote. You guys?
Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Poulet,
Yes.
Homer,
Yes,
Bush,
Yes.
Reimer.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right.
very good.
Yeah, that's just support, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I would really love to hear how this goes, like when we
Well, we will have that opportunity.
We'll observe.
make clear with Mr. Starnes here that he's,
And I think
got the
that,
bullseye.
I will say this, I just, based on our experience with these sorts of things, some of the things that have come up today in our meeting and some of the recommendations will certainly come up in the council, I would expect. So I think that you can use our questions and answers to hopefully make that smooth transition to approval in council, I hope.
We always try to learn from this group and bring it to council for sure,
right,
so,
that's right.
yeah, absolutely.
I think because I'm fine with it now, but I think the other thing we want to track
Yeah.
is how our definition of local workforce is working. We've learned a little bit about who's leaving and working out of county and who's
I think
coming
it's
in from
spelled
out of county. So I just want to make sure I think we should track that if we can a little bit on the workforce housing that actually applies and gets, and I just want to make sure that there's somebody that's working here.
I think we have that. I think it's written in the Chafee Housing Authority guidelines, is it not? What, the
don't-
workforce has to be working here in the.
Yeah, as far as the rules,
Remote
yes, we have
work.
the,
Of there.
Right.
yeah, but you're
in
saying
here,
the
I'm
analytics
reading
for this
as,
project.
80%. So like my first question was, 80% of your, or more of your income at a business employer within Chaffey County is documented. That's fine, but then if you're 60 or over, you have to do that for 4 years. And I kind of get it, and then you have to, or you have lived here for 10 years.
Right.
So
Well, that's just for the deed restricted, though. I mean, I think it's okay.
that's Chaffey County local workforce definition.
Right?
is what you're
Anyway,
getting
so,
at. It might be
but
more
if you're,
cumbersome.
if you're living here, but you're earning from somewhere else, but you really want to still live here, you're not eligible.
Right. Well,
That is correct.
typically, if you're living here and you're earning from somewhere else, you're making a lot more than those regulations,
Not necessarily.
like the remote work.
And
But
not if it's a
but if
market
it's for just local workforce,
Yeah.
that's what Chaffey County local workforce is. Anyway, I just think we should pay attention to that. See through this phase one as something to consider so people could fall through
Right.
slip through the cracks.
And
Yeah,
maybe,
good question for someone like Salty, because I think she has a
Yeah.
remote job.
yeah.
And I think honestly, that's one of the big challenges too, moving forward, as you do get a huge inventory of workforce housing that are deed restricted, is that deed restricted monitoring. And previous jurisdiction, you send out surveys and, hey, provide what your current employer is to prove that that local workforce requirement is still being met. I'm not sure if that's on the city's radar yet or the housing authority's radar,
Authority.
but it probably will have to be at some point.
I think the Housing Authority does a pretty good job of that, don't they, Christie? Aren't you on their committee? No.
Well,
Not
as more
anymore.
units come
Right.
on
Oh,
board,
dang.
they have
No.
more information to go off of,
Yeah.
for sure, so.
Yeah.
But that is generally something that housing authorities do track, and stay on top of.
And
But does Chafee yet?
And if the developers have trouble selling the deed restricted units to workforce housing under this definition, that could be something that could be tweaked. So, good point.
Nina says what? Oh, she is.
Okay.
Updates?
Let's see, the Senior LIHTC project did get, an application in for that.
They haven't
Really
heard
a
yet?
monumental lift on the part of staff
Oh, yeah.
and specifically Kristen and, North Point Development, who's our developer on that project. So they got it in, and we actually got them their administrative review entitlements for that project, which I think should help them with competition of that. And we anticipate hearing back on that particular award later this spring or early summer.
Really, on that.
Let's see. Kristen, did I mention that Kristen has been elevated to senior planner?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure of that. And so we're now in the midst of a search to replace her with that. And yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on. 5H is going to council for their, the second reading public hearing next week, so you might want to tune in for that one. That'll be fun. Think anything else?
Yeah,
Fine.
about Civic Plus, just briefly.
Oh, yeah.
I think, as I said in my email, we had some, I think, difficulties originally setting up the accounts. And it's a lot easier on staff to have like an official board set up. And to activate and deactivate the board, I have to activate your accounts. I don't think, like, City Council also has access to the board panel on Civic Plus. Not sure how much it's used. It's not something you have to do. It's more just helpful on my end of things to organize meeting minutes and agendas and things like that. If you feel like logging in and poking around, I have no idea what it looks like on your side of things, but it's not something you have to do.
Will we have a work session coming up on the 3rd?
We don't have anything scheduled for the moment. We will
Posted.
let you know if we do put something on that here in the next few days. So let's leave that as a TBD for right now.
And our next regular schedule will be
The
the
next
30th?
regular meeting is at the end of March.
30th would be the last
As of
Monday.
right now, I don't know if we actually do have something
have
on
to
that one
look.
just yet.
Traditionally
I
used.
can't remember.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Valley to Valley got their stuff.
Yep, okay. So it looks like we will be having a meeting on that one. Yep. So. I think that's about all we got at the moment.
All right.
Okay,
Oh.
just want to say a word of welcome to our new people. Thanks for being here in person. We appreciate it.
You're already
Yeah.
regretting it, aren't you?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. See you
Okay.
next time.
Oh, no.
Can't get it this place.
I don't even know what my.
That wasn't terrible.
No. It's, you can have.
Yep.
You're good. Good job running the meeting, per usual.